Mother Bear blocked traffic. While medics lifted a hurt child into the van, what happened next was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning sun cast long shadows across Pine Ridge Road as Maya Chen finished her shift at the local veterinary clinic. Her scrubs were stained with mud from treating an injured deer earlier, and exhaustion weighed heavy on her shoulders. She had been working double shifts for 3 weeks straight, trying to save enough money for her younger brother's college tuition. The quiet country road stretched ahead of her, lined with towering pine trees that swayed gently in the crisp autumn breeze. Maya pulled over at the scenic overlook, needing just a moment to collect her thoughts before heading home. She stepped out of her small Honda Civic and breathed in the fresh mountain air. The forest was alive with the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves. It was peaceful here, away from the chaos of the clinic where she spent most of her days treating sick and injured animals. As she leaned against her car, Maya noticed something unusual in the distance. A massive brown shape was moving slowly through the trees about 50 yards away. At first, she thought it might be a fallen log or perhaps a large boulder, but then she saw it shift and move with purpose. Her heart skipped a beat when she realized what she was looking at. It was a bear, a large female brown bear, and she wasn't alone. A small cub, probably only a few months old, stayed close to its mother's side as they foraged among the fallen pine cones and berries. Maya had seen bears before during her work at the clinic, but never this close in the wild. She reached slowly into her car for her phone, thinking she should document this rare sighting. The mother bear suddenly stopped moving. Her head lifted, and her ears twitched as if she had heard something that Maya couldn't detect. The cub continued playing, rolling around in a pile of leaves, completely unaware of its mother's alertness. Maya held her breath, wondering what had caught the bear's attention. Then she heard it too. The sound of a child crying somewhere in the distance. The wailing was desperate and filled with pain, echoing through the forest in a way that made Maya's stomach tighten with worry. She looked around, trying to pinpoint where the sound was coming from, but the trees made it difficult to see very far in any direction. The mother bear began moving toward the sound, her massive body pushing through the underbrush with surprising grace. The cub hurried to keep up, its tiny legs working hard to match its mother's pace. Maya watched in fascination as the bears disappeared deeper into the forest, heading in the direction of the crying child. Without thinking, Maya grabbed her emergency first aid kit from her car and began following the sound as well. Her veterinary training had taught her basic human first aid, and she couldn't ignore a child in distress. She moved carefully through the trees, trying not to make too much noise while keeping an eye out for the bears she had just seen. The crying grew louder as she got closer, and soon Maya could make out the voice of a young boy calling for help. She pushed through a cluster of young saplings and found herself at the edge of a small clearing where Pine Ridge Road curved sharply to the left. What she saw there made her gasp in shock. A boy who looked to be about 7 years old was sitting on the ground next to his overturned bicycle, clutching his left arm against his chest. Blood trickled down from a nasty scrape on his forehead, and his tear-streaked face was pale with pain and fear. His bike lay twisted and broken beside him, its front wheel bent at an odd angle. But that wasn't what made Maya's breath catch in her throat. The mother bear and her cub were standing less than 20 feet away from the injured boy, watching him intently. The child seemed completely unaware of their presence, too focused on his pain to notice the massive predator nearby. Maya's mind raced as she tried to figure out what to do. She couldn't approach the boy with the bears so close, and she was afraid that any sudden movement might provoke an attack. She slowly reached for her phone to call for help, her hands trembling as she dialed emergency services. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional. I need medical assistance at Pine Ridge Road, about 2 miles past the scenic overlook. Maya whispered into the phone, trying to keep her voice as quiet as possible. There's an injured child, and there are bears nearby. I'm afraid to approach. Bears? Ma'am, can you describe the situation more clearly? Maya took a deep breath and explained what she was seeing. The dispatcher assured her that both medical personnel and animal control were being sent to her location, but it would take at least 15 minutes for them to arrive. 15 minutes that felt like an eternity as Maya watched the standoff between the child and the bears. The boy's crying had quieted to soft whimpers, and he was beginning to look around his surroundings. Maya held her breath as his eyes finally landed on the mother bear. She expected him to scream or try to run, but instead something extraordinary happened. The boy stared at the bear for a long moment, and then, despite his obvious pain, he spoke in a small, shaky voice. Are you here to help me too? The mother bear tilted her head slightly, as if she was listening to his words. The cub took a small step forward, its curiosity overcoming its natural caution. Maya watched in amazement as the injured boy slowly extended his uninjured hand toward the small bear, his face no longer showing fear, but rather a strange sense of wonder. My name is Tommy, the boy whispered to the bears. I was trying to ride my bike to see my grandpa, but I hit that big rock over there. I think my arm is broken. The mother bear made a low, rumbling sound that wasn't quite a growl, but wasn't friendly either. Yet she made no move to approach or retreat. She simply stood there, watching the boy with what Maya could only describe as concern in her dark eyes. Maya realized she was witnessing something incredible. The bears weren't acting aggressively at all. If anything, they seemed to be guarding the injured child, creating a protective barrier around him as he sat vulnerable on the ground. But why? What could possibly motivate a wild bear to behave this way toward a human child? In the distance, Maya could hear the faint sound of sirens approaching. Help was on the way, but she wondered how the emergency responders would react when they discovered they had more than just an injured child to deal with. The situation was unlike anything she had ever encountered, and she had no idea how it would end. The sound of the sirens grew louder, and Maya watched as the mother bear's ears perked up at the unfamiliar noise. The massive animal shifted her weight from one paw to another, clearly agitated by the approaching vehicles. The cub moved closer to its mother, sensing her tension. Tommy, still sitting on the ground with his injured arm, looked up at the bears with growing concern. It's okay, Tommy whispered to the bears, his young voice filled with a wisdom that seemed far beyond his 7 years. Those are the good people. They're coming to help me get better. Maya was shocked by the boy's calm demeanor. Most children would be terrified in this situation, but Tommy seemed to understand that the bears meant him no harm. She watched as he slowly reached into his pocket with his good hand and pulled out something small. It was a granola bar, partially crushed from his fall. Are you hungry? Tommy asked the cub, breaking off a small piece of the bar and holding it out. My mom always packs extra snacks for me. Maya's heart nearly stopped as she watched the small bear cub take a tentative step forward. The mother bear made another low, rumbling sound, but she didn't move to stop her baby. The cub sniffed the air, clearly interested in the offered food, but remained cautious. The sirens were getting closer now, and Maya could see flashing lights through the trees. She knew she needed to warn the emergency responders about the bears before they arrived at the scene. She stepped back slowly, trying to create some distance so she could make another phone call without disturbing the delicate balance that had formed between the boy and the wild animals. As she reached for her phone, Maya's foot caught on a fallen branch, causing her to stumble and make more noise than she intended. The mother bear's head snapped in her direction, and for the first time since this strange encounter began, Maya felt truly afraid. The bear's eyes locked onto hers, and she could see the intelligence and wariness there. "Please don't hurt the lady," Tommy said softly, looking between Maya and the bears. "She's been watching us this whole time. I think she wants to help too." Maya was amazed that the boy had known she was there all along. She raised her hand slowly to show she meant no harm, and spoke in the gentlest voice she could manage. "I'm a veterinarian," she said quietly. "I help animals when they're hurt or sick. I called for help for you, Tommy." Tommy smiled, despite his pain. "I knew you were one of the good people. The bears knew it too. That's why they didn't chase you away." The mother bear continued to stare at Maya for several long seconds, before finally turning her attention back to her cub and the injured boy. Maya realized that somehow, impossibly, the bear had been evaluating her as a potential threat and had decided she wasn't dangerous. The thought sent chills down her spine. The first ambulance came around the curve in the road, its sirens wailing and lights flashing. Maya could see the paramedics through the windshield, and she waved her arms to get their attention. The ambulance slowed to a stop about 30 feet away from where Tommy sat with the bears. Two paramedics got out of the vehicle. A middle-aged man with graying hair and a young woman with red hair pulled back in a ponytail. They opened the back doors of the ambulance and began pulling out their equipment, but they froze when they saw the scene in front of them. "What in the world?" the male paramedic muttered, staring at the bears. Maya hurried over to them, keeping her voice low. "The boy's name is Tommy. He's been injured in a bicycle accident. His left arm appears to be broken, and he has a head injury. But please, be very careful. Those bears have been protecting him, and I don't think they'll let you approach easily." The female paramedic, whose name tag read Sarah, looked at Maya with confusion. "Protecting him? Bears don't protect human children." "I know how it sounds," Maya replied. "But I've been watching them for almost 20 minutes now. They're not acting aggressively toward the boy at all. If anything, they seem to be guarding him." The male paramedic, whose name was Robert, shook his head in disbelief. "I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like this. How are we supposed to treat the kid with two wild bears standing right there?" Before Maya could answer, they heard the sound of another vehicle approaching. A pickup truck from the local animal control department came around the curve, followed by a sheriff's deputy. Maya's stomach tightened as she realized the situation was about to become much more complicated. The animal control officer, a tall man with a thick mustache, got out of his truck and immediately began pulling out what looked like a tranquilizer gun. The sheriff's deputy, a woman in her 30s, approached with her hand resting on her service weapon. "We need to get those bears away from that child immediately," the animal control officer announced. "I'm going to tranquilize the adult, and then we can scare off the cub." "Wait," Maya called out, stepping between the officer and the bears. "They're not being aggressive. They've been protecting the boy." "Ma'am, I need you to step aside," the officer said firmly. "Wild bears are unpredictable and dangerous. We need to neutralize the threat before someone gets hurt." Maya looked back at Tommy, who was still sitting calmly with the bears nearby. The boy seemed to sense the tension among the adults, and his expression grew worried. "Please don't hurt them," Tommy called out, his young voice carrying clearly across the clearing. "They're my friends. They stayed with me so I wouldn't be scared." The animal control officer paused, clearly surprised by the boy's words. Sarah, the paramedic, stepped forward and addressed Tommy directly. "Tommy, we need to come help you with your arm. Can you ask your friends to move back a little bit so we can get closer?" Tommy looked up at the mother bear, and Maya watched in amazement as the boy seemed to communicate with the animal through some unspoken language. The bear's dark eyes moved from Tommy to the gathering crowd of adults and then back to the injured child. "She says she'll move back, but only if you promise not to hurt her baby," Tommy said matter-of-factly. The adults exchanged glances, unsure how to respond to such an unusual request. Maya stepped forward again, addressing the animal control officer. "What if we try a different approach? I'm a veterinarian, and I've worked with wild animals before. These bears are clearly exhibiting protective behavior, not aggressive behavior. If we move slowly and calmly, they might allow us to help Tommy without anyone getting hurt." The sheriff's deputy, whose badge identified her as Deputy Martinez, looked skeptical. "And what if you're wrong? What if they attack when we get close to the kid?" "Then you'll be right here to stop them," Maya replied. "But I really think they're trying to help him, not hurt him." Robert, the older paramedic, had been quietly observing the situation. He finally spoke up, addressing his partner Sarah. "The kid doesn't seem afraid of them at all, and look at their body language. The mother's not showing any signs of aggression that I can see. No raised hackles, no bared teeth, no defensive posturing." Sarah nodded slowly. "I agree. If they wanted to hurt him, they would have done it by now." The animal control officer still looked unconvinced, but he lowered his tranquilizer gun slightly. "This goes against every protocol I know, but if you think you can get close enough to treat the boy—" "Let me try first," Maya suggested. "I have experience with both veterinary medicine and basic first aid. If the bears accept me, then the paramedics can approach." Deputy Martinez shook her head. "I can't allow a civilian to put herself in danger like that." "I'm already in danger just by being here," Maya pointed out. "And I think Tommy trusts me. That might make the difference." Tommy had been listening to the adults debate his situation, and he called out again. "The mama bear says you can come closer if you move really slow. She knows you want to help me." Maya felt a chill run down her spine at the boy's words. How could a 7-year-old child possibly know what a wild bear was thinking? Yet everything Tommy had said so far had proven to be accurate. Maya took a deep breath and began walking slowly toward Tommy and the bears, her first aid kit in her hands. The mother bear watched her approach, but made no aggressive moves. The cub looked up at Maya with curious eyes, still holding the piece of granola bar that Tommy had offered. As Maya got within 10 feet of the group, the mother bear stood up on her hind legs. Maya's heart pounded as the massive animal towered above her, easily 8 feet tall. But instead of roaring or attacking, the bear simply looked down at Maya for a few seconds before dropping back down to all fours. "She was just getting a better look at you," Tommy explained with a small smile. "She says you smell like other animals, so she knows you're safe." Maya knelt down next to Tommy, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. The mother bear was now less than 5 feet away, close enough that Maya could see the details of her thick brown fur and the intelligence in her dark eyes. "Hi, Tommy," Maya said softly. "I'm Maya. Can you tell me where it hurts?" Tommy held up his injured arm. "I think it's broken, and my head hurts where I hit the ground." Maya gently examined the boy's arm, trying to ignore the massive bear breathing quietly beside her. The arm was definitely broken, and the cut on his head would need stitches, but neither injury appeared to be life-threatening. "You're going to be just fine," Maya assured him, "but we need to get you to the hospital so the doctors can fix your arm properly." Will my bear friends be okay? Tommy asked, looking concerned. I don't want anyone to hurt them. Maya glanced at the mother bear, who seemed to be listening to every word of their conversation. I think they'll be okay. They were just making sure you were safe until help arrived. As if she understood Maya's words, the mother bear made a soft huffing sound and began to back away slowly. The cub looked reluctant to leave, still clutching the piece of granola bar, but followed its mother as she moved toward the tree line. Maya called back to the paramedics. It's safe to approach now. The bears are moving away. Sarah and Robert hurried forward with their medical equipment, while the other officials maintained a respectful distance. As they began to properly assess Tommy's injuries, Maya watched the bears retreat into the forest. But just before they disappeared completely into the trees, the mother bear stopped and looked back at Tommy one more time. The boy waved at her with his good arm, and Maya could have sworn she saw the bear nod slightly before vanishing into the shadows. That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen, Sarah whispered, as she carefully immobilized Tommy's broken arm. I've never heard of wild bears behaving like that. Maya helped the paramedics transfer Tommy to a stretcher, her mind still reeling from what she had witnessed. As they loaded the boy into the ambulance, he grabbed Maya's hand with his uninjured arm. Thank you for not letting them hurt my friends, he said quietly. How did you know the bears wouldn't hurt you? Maya asked, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. Tommy's eyes grew distant, as if he was remembering something important. My grandpa told me that animals can sense when someone needs help. He said they don't always know how to help like people do, but sometimes they try anyway. Is your grandpa the one you were trying to visit when you had your accident? Tommy nodded, tears forming in his eyes. He's in the hospital. He's really sick, and my mom said I might not get to see him again. I wanted to bring him some of the berries from the forest because they're his favorite. Maya felt her heart break for this brave little boy who had been trying to do something kind for his sick grandfather. She squeezed his hand gently. I'm sure your grandpa will be so proud of you when he hears about how brave you were today. As the ambulance prepared to leave for the hospital, Maya noticed that the other officials were still standing around discussing the unusual encounter. The animal control officer was shaking his head in disbelief, while Deputy Martinez was taking notes for her report. I'm going to follow them to the hospital, Maya told the group. I want to make sure Tommy is okay. You did good work today, Robert, the older paramedic, told her. That kid is lucky you were here. Maya climbed into her car and followed the ambulance toward town, but she couldn't stop thinking about what Tommy had said about his grandfather. There was something about this whole situation that felt like more than just a coincidence. Why had the bears chosen that exact moment to appear? Why had they protected Tommy instead of ignoring him or seeing him as a threat? As they drove through the small mountain town, Maya noticed they were passing the regional medical center where she occasionally brought injured wildlife. She realized this must be where Tommy's grandfather was being treated. The coincidences were piling up in a way that made her wonder if there was something bigger at work here. At the hospital, Maya waited in the emergency room while the doctors examined Tommy more thoroughly. She had called his parents, who were driving down from the next town over and would meet them at the hospital. While she waited, Maya found herself thinking about the look in the mother bear's eyes when she had evaluated her as a potential threat. There had been something almost human about that intelligence, as if the bear had been making a calculated decision rather than acting on pure instinct. Maya had worked with many wild animals during her career, but she had never encountered anything quite like this. A nurse approached her in the waiting room. Are you Maya Chen? The little boy is asking for you. Maya followed the nurse back to Tommy's room, where the boy was lying in a hospital bed with his arm in a cast. Despite everything he had been through, he managed to smile when he saw her. "The doctor says my arm will be all better in a few weeks," Tommy announced, "and my mom and dad are coming to get me." "That's wonderful news," Maya said, sitting down in the chair next to his bed. "How are you feeling?" "A little tired, but okay. I keep thinking about the bears, though." "Do you think they made it back to their home safely?" "I'm sure they did. They seemed to know exactly where they were going." Tommy was quiet for a moment, then looked at Maya with serious eyes. "Can I tell you a secret?" Maya nodded, leaning closer to hear what he had to say. "This isn't the first time I've met those bears," Tommy whispered. "I've seen them before, when I visit my grandpa at his cabin in the woods. The mama bear has a scar on her left shoulder, and the baby has a little white patch on his chest. I've been leaving food for them for months." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "You've been feeding wild bears?" "My grandpa taught me how to do it safely. He said the mama bear was orphaned when she was young, and some people at a wildlife sanctuary took care of her before releasing her back into the wild. She's not as afraid of humans as most bears." This revelation changed everything Maya thought she understood about the day's events. The bear's protective behavior suddenly made much more sense if she had positive experiences with humans in the past, and if she recognized Tommy as someone who had been kind to her. "Does your grandpa know about your friendship with the bears?" Maya asked. Tommy's expression grew sad. "He's the one who introduced me to them, but he's been too sick to go to the cabin lately. I think the mama bear misses him too." Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes as she began to understand the full scope of what had happened. The bear hadn't just been protecting a random human child. She had been protecting someone she considered part of her extended family, someone who had shown her kindness and care. "Tommy, would you like me to take a message to your grandpa?" I could tell him about what happened today. Tommy's face lit up with hope. "Would you really do that?" "He's on the 3rd floor in room 314. His name is Frank Miller." Maya promised she would visit Tommy's grandfather and tell him about the incredible events of the day. As she left Tommy's room, she realized that this story was far from over. In fact, she had a feeling that the most amazing part was yet to come. Maya took the elevator to the 3rd floor, her mind racing with questions about what Tommy had told her. Room 314 was at the end of a long hallway, and as she approached, she could hear the soft beeping of medical equipment. She knocked gently on the door before entering. The man lying in the hospital bed looked much older than his 72 years. Frank Miller's once strong frame had been weakened by months of illness, but his eyes were still bright and alert. When he saw Maya enter, he smiled warmly. "You must be the veterinarian Tommy was talking about," Frank said, his voice raspy but kind. "The nurses told me someone helped my grandson today." Maya pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down. "Mr. Miller, what happened today was extraordinary. I think you need to hear the whole story." As Maya recounted the events of the afternoon, she watched Frank's expression change from concern to amazement, to something that looked almost like relief. When she finished describing how the bears had protected Tommy, Frank was quiet for a long moment. "Bella," he whispered finally. "I'm sorry?" Maya asked. "The mother bear's name is Bella. I've been calling her that for 3 years now, ever since she first showed up at my cabin with her previous cub." Frank's eyes grew distant with memory. That first cub didn't make it through the winter. Bella was heartbroken, carrying around a stick for weeks like it was her baby. Maya felt her throat tighten with emotion. Tommy mentioned that she was rehabilitated at a wildlife sanctuary. Frank nodded slowly. She was brought to Mountain View Wildlife Sanctuary when she was just 6 months old. Her mother had been killed by poachers, and Bella was found nearly starved to death. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell ran the sanctuary back then. She spent 2 years preparing Bella for release back into the wild. Dr. Hartwell? Maya's eyes widened. Elizabeth Hartwell was my mentor in veterinary school. She's the reason I specialized in wildlife medicine. Frank stared at Maya in shock. Elizabeth Hartwell was your mentor? She passed away 5 years ago, but she taught me everything I know about working with wild animals. She always said that some animals never forget the kindness humans show them. Frank struggled to sit up higher in his bed, wincing with the effort. Maya, I need to tell you something that might sound crazy, but after what happened today, I think you'll believe me. Maya leaned forward, sensing that Frank was about to reveal something important. 3 years ago, when Bella first came to my cabin, she was acting strangely. She kept bringing me things, pine cones, flowers, even a rabbit she had caught. At first, I thought she was just being friendly, but then I realized what she was doing. What do you mean? She was trying to take care of me, just like humans had taken care of her at the sanctuary. When I had my first heart attack 2 years ago, Bella found me collapsed on my cabin porch. She stayed with me for 6 hours until my neighbor found us. The doctors said if I had been alone much longer, I would have died. Maya felt chills running down her arms. She saved your life? That's not even the most incredible part, Frank continued. After that, Bella started bringing her new cub to visit me regularly. She was teaching him that humans could be trusted. Tommy was visiting me one day when they showed up, and he immediately fell in love with them. Frank paused to catch his breath, and Maya could see that talking was exhausting for him, but he seemed determined to tell her the complete story. Maya, there's something else you need to know about Dr. Hartwell and Bella. Elizabeth didn't just rehabilitate her at the sanctuary. She did something that was considered controversial at the time. What did she do? She taught Bella to recognize when humans were in distress. Elizabeth believed that some animals could be trained to help people, even after they were released back into the wild. Bella was her proof of concept. Maya's mind was reeling. Are you saying that Dr. Hartwell intentionally trained Bella to help humans? Not just to help, Frank said quietly. To heal. Before Maya could ask what he meant by that, a nurse entered the room carrying a clipboard. Mr. Miller, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to discuss your test results with your family. Are you expecting your daughter soon? Frank looked at Maya with urgent eyes. Maya, I need you to do something for me. In my cabin, there's a journal that Elizabeth gave me. It explains everything about Bella and what she's capable of. Tommy knows where I hide the spare key. Mr. Miller, what aren't you telling me? Bella doesn't just help people who are injured, Frank whispered as the nurse busied herself checking his IV. She can sense when someone is dying, and when she finds them, she does something that modern medicine can't explain. Maya felt her heart rate increase. What does she do? She heals them. Somehow, some way, that bear has the ability to heal people who are beyond medical help. The nurse looked up from her clipboard. Mr. Miller, your daughter just arrived. She's coming up now. Frank gripped Maya's hand with surprising strength. Promise me you'll get that journal. Promise me you'll learn the truth about Bella. After what happened today with Tommy, I think she's trying to tell us something important. Maya nodded, though her mind was struggling to process what Frank was telling her. I promise. A woman in her 40s entered the room, her face etched with worry. She had the same kind eyes as Tommy, and Maya realized this must be his mother. Dad, how are you feeling? The woman asked, rushing to Frank's bedside. I'm okay, Sarah. This is Maya, the woman who helped Tommy today. Sarah turned to Maya with tears in her eyes. I can't thank you enough for what you did. The doctors said Tommy could have been in serious danger if he had been left alone much longer. Your son is incredibly brave, Maya replied, and he has an amazing relationship with those bears. Sarah's expression grew concerned. I've been worried about Tommy spending so much time in the woods with Dad. I know he means well, but wild animals are unpredictable. Frank looked at his daughter with sad eyes. Sarah, you don't understand what we're dealing with here. Bella isn't just any wild animal. Dad, please don't start with the stories about that bear again. I know you care about her, but she's still a dangerous wild animal. Maya could see the tension between father and daughter, and she realized that Sarah didn't believe Frank's claims about Bella's special abilities. Given what Maya had witnessed today, she found herself more inclined to believe Frank than his skeptical daughter. I should let you have some family time, Maya said, standing up from her chair. Mr. Miller, I'll do what you asked. As Maya left the hospital, her mind was overwhelmed with everything she had learned. The idea that a wild bear could have healing abilities seemed impossible, yet she couldn't ignore what she had witnessed with her own eyes. Bella's behavior toward Tommy had been unlike anything in her veterinary experience. Maya drove back toward Pine Ridge Road as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the mountain landscape. She needed to find Frank's cabin and retrieve the journal he had mentioned. If Dr. Hartwell had truly taught Bella to help humans, there might be documentation of her methods. Tommy had said the cabin was in the woods near where the bear encounter had taken place. Maya parked her car at the scenic overlook and began hiking into the forest, following what appeared to be a well-worn path. After about 20 minutes of walking, she came upon a small log cabin nestled in a clearing surrounded by tall pine trees. The cabin looked like something from a fairy tale, with a stone chimney and a wraparound porch decorated with wind chimes and bird feeders. Maya found the spare key exactly where Tommy had said it would be, hidden under a painted rock shaped like a turtle near the front steps. Inside, the cabin was cozy and lived in, with books lining the walls and comfortable furniture arranged around a stone fireplace. Maya could see why Frank enjoyed spending time here. The place had a peaceful, healing energy that seemed to emanate from every corner. She found the journal Frank had mentioned sitting on a desk near the window. It was a thick, leather-bound book filled with handwritten notes in 2 different styles of writing. Maya recognized one as Frank's neat script, but the other handwriting was more elegant and flowing. Maya opened the journal to the first page and saw an inscription that made her gasp. To Frank, may you continue the work we started with Bella. Some gifts are too precious to waste. Elizabeth Hartwell, 2019. As Maya began reading the entries, she discovered that the journal contained detailed observations about Bella's behavior over the past 3 years. Frank had documented every interaction he had with the bear, noting patterns and behaviors that seemed to go far beyond normal animal instincts. One entry, from 6 months ago, caught Maya's attention. Bella brought an injured hawk to the cabin today. The bird's wing was badly broken, and I thought it would die for certain. But Bella laid down next to it and began making a low humming sound. After about an hour, the hawk's wing appeared to be healing. By the next morning, the bird was flying again. I've never seen anything like it. Maya flipped through more pages, finding similar accounts of Bella apparently healing injured animals. There were entries about deer with broken legs, rabbits with infected wounds, and even a young fox that had been poisoned. In every case, Frank described the same pattern. Bella would lie down next to the injured animal and make a low, rhythmic humming sound. But the most shocking entries came from Dr. Hartwell herself. Her handwriting filled several pages near the back of the journal, and Maya realized these must have been notes that Elizabeth had given to Frank before her death. The phenomenon I observed with Bella during her rehabilitation cannot be explained by current scientific understanding, Dr. Hartwell had written. However, the evidence is undeniable. This bear possesses some form of bioelectric healing ability that allows her to accelerate the natural healing process in other living beings. Maya continued reading, her amazement growing with each page. I first noticed Bella's abilities when she was about a year old. Other animals at the sanctuary began seeking her out when they were injured or sick. At first, I thought it was coincidence, but the pattern became too consistent to ignore. I began conducting controlled observations, and the results were remarkable. Dr. Hartwell went on to describe experiments where she had introduced injured animals to Bella under carefully controlled conditions. In every case, the animals healed significantly faster than normal medical treatment would predict. The implications of this discovery are staggering, Elizabeth had written. If we could understand how Bella's healing ability works, we might be able to develop new treatments for conditions that are currently considered incurable. Maya was so absorbed in reading the journal that she didn't notice the sun had set completely. The cabin was growing dark, and she reached over to turn on a lamp beside the desk. As the light filled the room, Maya heard a soft sound from outside the cabin. She looked up from the journal and froze. Through the window, she could see two familiar shapes moving in the clearing outside. Bella and her cub had returned to Frank's cabin. Maya watched as the mother bear approached the cabin slowly, her nose lifted to the air as if she was trying to detect familiar scents. The cub stayed close to its mother, but Maya could see curiosity in its movements as it explored the area around the cabin. Bella stopped directly in front of the window where Maya was sitting and looked inside. For a moment, their eyes met through the glass, and Maya felt the same strange connection she had experienced during the rescue earlier that day. The bear's dark eyes seemed to be studying her, evaluating her in some way that Maya couldn't understand. Then, something extraordinary happened. Bella began making the low, rhythmic humming sound that Frank had described in his journal entries. The sound was unlike anything Maya had ever heard. Part growl, part purr, part song. It seemed to vibrate through the walls of the cabin and into Maya's very bones. As the humming continued, Maya began to feel a strange warmth spreading through her body. She realized that her shoulder, which had been aching for weeks from an old injury, was no longer causing her pain. The chronic headache she had been fighting all day seemed to disappear completely. Maya stood up from the chair, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. Was Bella actually trying to heal her? The idea seemed impossible, yet the evidence was right there in Frank's journal and in her own body's response to the bear's strange song. The humming stopped as suddenly as it had begun, and Bella stepped back from the window. She looked at Maya for one more long moment, then turned and walked toward the trees with her cub following behind. Before they disappeared into the forest, the mother bear stopped and looked back at the cabin one more time, as if she was leaving Maya with a message. Maya understood. Bella was showing her that the stories in the journal were true. The bear had healing abilities that defied scientific explanation, and she was willing to use those abilities to help both humans and animals in need. But as Maya sat back down with the journal, she realized there was still one crucial question that remained unanswered. Why had Bella chosen today to reveal her abilities so dramatically? What was so special about Tommy's accident that had prompted the bear to risk exposure to so many humans? Maya turned to the last page of Dr. Hartwell's notes and found her answer. I believe Bella's healing abilities are connected to emotional distress as much as physical injury, Elizabeth had written. She seems to be drawn to situations where someone is not just hurt, but heartbroken. The combination of physical and emotional pain appears to trigger her strongest healing responses. Maya thought about Tommy's desperate attempt to visit his dying grandfather and Frank's deteriorating condition in the hospital. She realized that Bella hadn't just been protecting an injured child today. She had been responding to a family in crisis, trying to heal not just Tommy's broken arm, but the emotional wounds that were tearing his family apart. As Maya prepared to leave the cabin with the journal, she made a decision that would change everything. She was going to help Bella complete her mission. Somehow, she was going to find a way to bring this extraordinary bear to Frank Miller's bedside, and she was going to give them both a chance to say goodbye properly. The question was how to accomplish such an impossible task without putting everyone involved in danger. Maya knew that what she was contemplating went against every rule of wildlife management and hospital protocol. But after everything she had witnessed today, she also knew that some rules were meant to be broken when something truly miraculous was at stake. Maya locked up the cabin and began the hike back to her car, the journal tucked safely under her arm. She had no idea how she was going to pull off what she was planning, but she knew she had to try. Frank Miller had saved Bella's life by caring for her over the years, and now it was time for Bella to return the favor. As she reached her car, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Sarah, Tommy's mother. "Dad took a turn for the worse tonight. The doctors don't think he has much time left. Tommy is asking if you can come back to the hospital. He says he needs to tell you something important about the bears." Maya's heart sank as she realized that time was running out faster than she had expected. If she was going to help Bella and Frank have their final reunion, she would need to act quickly, and somehow she suspected that Tommy held the key to making it all possible. Maya started her car and began the drive back to the hospital, her mind racing with plans and possibilities. She had no idea what Tommy wanted to tell her, but she had a feeling it was going to change everything once again. This day had already been full of impossible things, and Maya had a suspicion that the most impossible thing of all was yet to come. When Maya arrived back at the hospital, she could sense the change in atmosphere immediately. The third floor was quieter than before, with nurses moving more urgently between rooms. She found Tommy sitting in a chair beside his grandfather's bed, holding Frank's hand with his uninjured arm. Sarah was there too, her eyes red from crying. "Maya!" Tommy called out when he saw her enter the room. "I'm so glad you came back. Grandpa's been asking for you." Frank's condition had clearly deteriorated since Maya had left earlier that evening. His breathing was labored, and his skin had taken on a grayish pallor that Maya recognized from her years of working with dying animals. But his eyes were still alert, and he managed a weak smile when he saw her. "Did you find the journal?" Frank whispered. Maya nodded, patting her bag where she had tucked the leather-bound book. "I read it all. Frank, what Dr. Hartwell discovered about Bella is incredible." "There's more," Frank said, struggling to speak clearly. "Things I couldn't write down. Things that would sound too crazy, even for that journal." Sarah looked between her father and Maya with confusion. "What journal? What are you two talking about?" Before Frank could answer, Tommy spoke up with the matter-of-fact tone that had surprised everyone all day. "Mom, Grandpa has been keeping track of all the times Bella helped sick animals get better, but she doesn't just help animals." "Tommy, not now," Sarah said firmly. "Your grandfather needs to rest." "But Mom, this is important," Tommy insisted. "Bella has been trying to help Grandpa too, but she can't get close enough to him here in the hospital." Maya felt her pulse quicken. "Tommy, what do you mean she's been trying to help your grandfather?" Tommy looked at his mother nervously, then back at Maya. "For the past 3 months, every time Grandpa got really sick, Bella would show up at the cabin. She would sit outside his bedroom window and make her special humming sound. Frank nodded weakly. He's right. At first, I thought it was coincidence, but then I realized she was responding to my pain somehow. Every time she did her healing hum, I would feel better for a few days. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. Dad, you're talking about a wild bear like she's some kind of magical creature. This is exactly the kind of thinking that worries me about you and Tommy spending so much time in the woods. Sarah, Frank said with more strength than he had shown all evening, I need you to listen to me carefully. What I'm about to tell you might be the most important thing you ever hear. Maya watched as Frank struggled to sit up higher in his hospital bed, determination overriding his physical weakness. 6 months ago, when the doctors told me my cancer had spread and there was nothing more they could do, I went to the cabin to say goodbye to Bella. I wanted her to understand that I wouldn't be coming back anymore. Frank paused to catch his breath, and Maya could see that talking was exhausting him. But he seemed driven to tell this story while he still could. When I got to the cabin that day, I was in so much pain I could barely walk. I collapsed on the porch, and I thought I was going to die right there. But then Bella appeared with her cub, and she did something she had never done before. What did she do? Maya asked, leaning forward in her chair. She touched me. Not with her paw, but with her nose. She pressed her nose against my chest, right over my heart, and she began humming. But this time, the humming was different. It was stronger, more intense. Frank's eyes grew distant as he remembered the experience. I felt this incredible warmth spreading through my whole body. The pain disappeared completely, and I felt stronger than I had in months. When I went back to the doctor the following week, my cancer markers had dropped significantly. Sarah stared at her father in shock. Dad, that's impossible. Cancer doesn't just improve on its own. The doctors couldn't explain it either, Frank continued. They ran the tests 3 times to make sure there wasn't a mistake. My oncologist said it was the most dramatic improvement he had ever seen in someone with my stage of cancer. Maya felt chills running down her spine as she realized the implications of what Frank was telling her. How many times did this happen? 3 times over the past 6 months. Each time I got worse, Bella would somehow know, and she would come to help me. But about 2 weeks ago, she stopped coming to the cabin. Tommy looked up at his grandfather with sad eyes. That's when you started getting really sick again, isn't it, Grandpa? Frank nodded. I think Bella knew that my time was running out, and there was a limit to what even her healing abilities could do. But Tommy, you said you had something important to tell Maya about the bears. Tommy stood up from his chair and walked over to Maya. Bella has been trying to get to the hospital to help Grandpa one more time. I've been seeing her and her cub in the woods behind the hospital for the past 3 days. Maya's eyes widened. She's been here? At the hospital? She's been walking around the building at night, trying to find a way to get inside. I think she can sense that Grandpa's in here somewhere, but she doesn't know how to reach him. Sarah looked alarmed. Tommy, if there's a bear lurking around the hospital, we need to call animal control immediately. No, Mom, Tommy said urgently. You don't understand. Bella isn't dangerous. She's trying to help, but she's getting frustrated because she can't figure out how to get to Grandpa. Maya stood up and began pacing around the small hospital room, her mind working furiously. An impossible plan was beginning to form in her thoughts, but she knew it would require taking enormous risks. Frank, Maya said slowly, if I could find a way to bring Bella to you, do you think she could help you one more time? Frank's eyes lit up with hope. Maya, if Bella could touch me one more time, I think she might be able to give me enough strength to... He stopped, glancing at his daughter. Enough strength to what? Sarah demanded. Frank looked at Tommy with love and sadness. Enough strength to see my grandson grow up a little longer. Sarah burst into tears, finally understanding the full weight of what her father and son were telling her. Even if this bear could do what you think she can do, how could we possibly arrange something like that? This is a hospital. They don't allow wild animals inside. Maya sat back down and pulled out Frank's journal. Actually, there might be a way. According to Dr. Hartwell's notes, Bella was classified as a therapy animal during her time at the wildlife sanctuary. Technically, she might still have that designation in the system. What does that mean? Tommy asked. It means that under certain circumstances, Bella could be considered a legitimate therapy animal with the right paperwork and medical justification. Sarah shook her head vigorously. Maya, you can't be serious. You're talking about bringing a wild bear into a hospital room. I'm talking about giving your father a chance to live, Maya replied quietly. Sarah, I've seen what Bella can do. Today, she protected your son. Tonight, she healed an injury I've had for months. The evidence is overwhelming that she has genuine healing abilities. Frank reached out and took his daughter's hand. Sarah, I know this sounds impossible, but I'm asking you to trust me one more time. If Bella can't help me, then at least I'll get to say goodbye to her properly. Sarah looked between her father, her son, and Maya, clearly torn between disbelief and desperate hope. How would we even arrange something like this? Maya took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to suggest could end her veterinary career if it went wrong. I have a contact at the State Wildlife Department. If I can convince him that this is a legitimate therapy animal situation, he might be able to provide the necessary permits. And the hospital administration? Sarah asked. That's going to be the harder part, Maya admitted. But I think I know someone who might be able to help us. Maya explained that Dr. Marcus Webb, the chief of staff at the hospital, had been a friend of Dr. Hartwell's. If anyone would be willing to consider such an unusual request, it would be him. There's just one problem, Maya continued. Even if we can get all the permits and permissions, we still need to convince Bella to cooperate. We can't exactly call her and ask her to come to the hospital. Tommy smiled for the first time since Maya had returned to the room. I can get Bella to come. She's been trying to find a way to help Grandpa. If I go to where she's been waiting and explain what we're trying to do, she'll understand. Tommy, you can't go into the woods alone at night, Sarah protested. I won't be alone. Maya will come with me, won't you? Maya looked at this brave 7-year-old boy who seemed to have a deeper understanding of the natural world than most adults. If your mother agrees, then yes, I'll go with you. Frank squeezed Sarah's hand. Sweetheart, I know this is a lot to ask, but if there's even a small chance that Bella can help me have more time with you and Tommy, isn't it worth trying? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with the decision. Finally, she looked at her son and saw the hope in his eyes. Okay, she said softly. We'll try. But I want to know exactly what the plan is, and I want guarantees that everyone will be safe. Maya nodded. The first step is for me to contact Dr. Webb and my friend at the Wildlife Department. If I can get them to agree to this, then we'll need to move quickly. According to the nurses, your father might not have much time left. How quickly? Sarah asked. If everything goes perfectly, we could attempt this tomorrow night. Tommy clapped his hands together excitedly. Bella will be so happy. She's been worried about Grandpa for days. Frank smiled at his grandson's enthusiasm, but Maya could see the exhaustion in his eyes. The conversation had taken a lot out of him, and his breathing was becoming more labored. Frank, you need to rest now, Maya said gently. I'm going to start making phone calls tonight. Tommy, I'll pick you up tomorrow evening if everything gets approved. As Maya prepared to leave, Frank called her back to his bedside. "Maya, there's one more thing you need to know about Bella's healing abilities." "What is it?" "According to Dr. Hartwell's research, Bella's healing power grows stronger when she's emotionally connected to the person she's trying to help. The more she cares about someone, the more effective her healing becomes." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. "Frank, she's been trying to reach you for days. I think it's safe to say she cares about you very much." Frank's eyes filled with tears. "That bear saved my life in more ways than one. After my wife died, I was ready to give up on everything. But taking care of Bella gave me a reason to keep going. She brought joy back into my life. And now she's trying to give you more time to share that joy with your family," Maya said. As Maya left the hospital that night, she knew she was about to embark on the most challenging and potentially rewarding endeavor of her career. She had less than 24 hours to convince a hospital administrator and a state wildlife official to approve the most unusual therapy animal visit in medical history. But as she thought about Frank's love for Bella, Tommy's unwavering faith in the bear's abilities, and her own first-hand experience with Bella's healing power, Maya felt a sense of determination that surprised her with its intensity. She spent the entire night making phone calls, sending emails, and calling in favors from colleagues and contacts throughout the state. By morning, she had managed to reach Dr. Marcus Webb and convince him to meet with her first thing in the morning. The conversation with Dr. Webb was easier than Maya had expected. As it turned out, he had been following Dr. Hartwell's research on animal-assisted healing for years, and he was intrigued by the possibility of witnessing Bella's abilities firsthand. "Elizabeth always believed that we were barely scratching the surface of what animals could do to help heal humans," Dr. Webb told Maya over coffee in his office. "If this bear truly has the abilities you're describing, then documenting this interaction could revolutionize our understanding of the alternative healing methods." The wildlife department was more challenging to convince, but Maya's reputation as a respected veterinarian and her connection to Dr. Hartwell's work eventually won them over. By noon, she had all the necessary permits and approvals in place. Now came the most difficult part of all: finding Bella and convincing her to trust them enough to enter a human building surrounded by strange smells, sounds, and people. Maya picked up Tommy from the hospital that evening just as the sun was setting. Sarah had insisted on coming with them, despite her obvious nervousness about the whole plan. "Are you sure Bella will be where you think she is?" Maya asked Tommy as they drove toward the wooded area behind the hospital. "She's there," Tommy said confidently. "I can feel it." When they reached the edge of the forest, Maya was amazed to discover that Tommy was right. Bella and her cub were waiting in a small clearing about 100 yards from the hospital building, almost as if they had been expecting them. The mother bear looked up when she saw Tommy approaching, and Maya heard her make a soft chuffing sound that seemed to express both greeting and concern. The cub ran toward Tommy, stopping just short of touching him, but clearly excited to see the boy again. "Hi, Bella," Tommy said softly, sitting down on the ground so he would be less intimidating to the bears. "I need to tell you something important about Grandpa." Maya watched in amazement as Tommy began speaking to Bella as if she were a close friend. He explained about Frank being in the hospital, about how sick he was, and about the plan to bring her inside to help him. "I know it's scary to go into a building with lots of people," Tommy said. "But Grandpa really needs you. He's been missing you so much." Bella listened to every word, her intelligent eyes focused intently on Tommy's face. When he finished speaking, she was quiet for several long moments, as if she was considering what he had asked of her. Then, slowly and deliberately, Bella walked over to Maya and pressed her massive head against Maya's shoulder. Maya felt the same warmth and healing energy she had experienced at Frank's cabin, and she understood that Bella was communicating her willingness to help. "She says yes," Tommy announced with a huge smile, "but she's worried about her baby. She doesn't want to leave him alone." Maya looked at the small cub, who was no bigger than a medium-sized dog. "The cub can come too. Dr. Webb said he could make arrangements for both of them." Sarah had been standing quietly throughout this entire exchange, her face a mixture of disbelief and wonder. "I still can't believe I'm watching my 7-year-old son have a conversation with wild bears," she murmured. "Mom, they're not wild anymore," Tommy said matter-of-factly. "They're family." As if to prove his point, the cub walked over to Sarah and gently sniffed her hand. When she didn't pull away, the small bear sat down beside her, looking up at her with curious eyes. "Okay," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly. "I think I'm starting to understand why Dad fell in love with these animals." Maya pulled out her phone and called Dr. Webb. "We're ready. Can you meet us at the staff entrance with a wheelchair and the transport crate?" "Already waiting, Doctor," Webb replied. "The night shift has been briefed, and we've cleared a path to Mr. Miller's room. Maya, I have to say, in 30 years of medicine, I've never attempted anything quite like this." "Neither have I," Maya admitted, "but I have a feeling it's going to be worth it." As they prepared to escort Bella and her cub toward the hospital, Maya felt a mixture of excitement and terror. Everything they had worked for over the past day was about to culminate in either a miraculous healing or a complete disaster. But as she looked at Bella's determined expression and Tommy's unwavering faith, Maya knew they were doing the right thing. Some connections between living beings transcend the boundaries of species, and some love is powerful enough to work miracles. Tonight, they were about to find out if a bear's love for an old man could be strong enough to give him back his life. The journey from the forest to the hospital felt like walking through a dream. Dr. Webb met them at the staff entrance with a specially modified wheelchair that could accommodate Bella's size. The bear moved with surprising grace and calm, as if she understood the gravity of the situation. Her cub stayed close to her side, occasionally looking up at the humans with trusting eyes. The hospital corridors were eerily quiet as they made their way to the 3rd floor. A few night shift nurses watched in silent amazement as the unusual procession passed by, but no one questioned what they were seeing. Dr. Webb had prepared them well. When they reached Frank's room, Sarah went in first to prepare her father. Maya could hear her speaking softly, explaining what was about to happen. Then Sarah opened the door wide and stepped aside. Bella entered the room slowly, her massive form somehow seeming gentle and non-threatening in the sterile hospital environment. Frank's eyes widened when he saw her, and tears began streaming down his cheeks. "Bella," he whispered, his voice filled with overwhelming emotion. "You came." The bear approached his bedside carefully, as if she could sense his fragility. She sniffed the air around him, and Maya could see recognition and concern in her dark eyes. The machines monitoring Frank's vital signs began beeping softly as his heart rate increased with excitement. Tommy sat down on the floor beside the hospital bed, and the cub immediately curled up next to him. "It's okay, Grandpa," Tommy said softly. "Bella's here to help." What happened next would stay with Maya for the rest of her life. Bella gently placed her massive head on Frank's chest, positioning herself so that her nose was directly over his heart. Then she began to hum. The sound that filled the hospital room was unlike anything Maya had ever heard. It was deeper and more resonant than when Bella had healed her at the cabin. The humming seemed to vibrate through the walls, the floor, and even through Maya's bones. The medical equipment in the room began to hum in harmony, creating an otherworldly symphony of healing. Frank's breathing immediately became easier, and color began returning to his pale cheeks. The heart monitor showed his rhythm becoming stronger and more regular. But more than the physical changes, Maya could see a transformation in Frank's eyes. The pain and exhaustion that had clouded them was being replaced by clarity and peace. Sarah stood frozen by the door, watching her father's face change before her eyes. "Dad," she whispered. Frank reached up with a trembling hand and gently touched Bella's fur. "Thank you, old friend," he said, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "Thank you for everything." Bella continued humming for nearly 20 minutes, her healing energy flowing into Frank's weakened body. The cub had fallen asleep next to Tommy, both of them bathed in the warm glow that seemed to emanate from the mother bear. When Bella finally lifted her head, Frank was sitting up in bed under his own power for the first time in days. The change in him was so dramatic that Maya had to check the medical equipment to make sure she wasn't imagining things. Every indicator showed significant improvement in his condition. "How do you feel?" Dr. Webb asked, his medical training warring with the impossibility of what he had just witnessed. Frank smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that lit up his entire face. "I feel like I could climb a mountain." But Maya could see something else in Bella's behavior. The bear was moving more slowly now, and her breathing seemed labored. Maya realized with a shock that Bella had transferred some of her own life force to Frank, weakening herself in the process. "Bella," Maya said softly, approaching the bear with concern, "are you okay?" Bella looked at Maya with tired but content eyes, then walked over to the window that overlooked the forest. She pressed her nose against the glass and made a soft chuffing sound that seemed to say goodbye. Frank understood immediately. "She's used too much of her energy," he said, his voice filled with sadness and gratitude. "She's given me everything she could." Tommy stood up and walked over to Bella, wrapping his small arms around her massive neck. "Thank you for saving my grandpa," he whispered. "I love you." Bella gently nuzzled Tommy's cheek, then called to her cub with a low grunt. The small bear reluctantly got up from his comfortable spot on the floor and moved to his mother's side. As the bear family prepared to leave, Frank called out to them one more time. "Bella, you've given me the greatest gift imaginable. You've given me time with my family. I promise I won't waste a single moment of it." Bella turned back to look at Frank one last time, and Maya saw something profound pass between them. It was more than goodbye. It was an acknowledgement of a bond that transcended species, a love that had literally moved mountains and healed the impossible. Dr. Webb helped escort Bella and her cub back through the hospital corridors and out into the night. As they watched the bears disappear into the forest, Maya felt a mixture of joy and sadness. They had witnessed something truly miraculous, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they had also witnessed a sacrifice. 3 weeks later, Frank Miller was released from the hospital with a clean bill of health that baffled his oncologists. His cancer markers had dropped to undetectable levels, and his overall condition had improved so dramatically that his doctors called it a medical miracle. Maya continued to visit Frank at his cabin regularly, and Tommy spent every weekend there, learning about the forest and the animals that called it home. But Bella and her cub were never seen again. Some say that bears who use their healing powers too generously fade away like shooting stars, their energy becoming part of the forest itself. Others believe that Bella simply moved deeper into the wilderness, her work with Frank complete. But Tommy insists that sometimes, when the wind blows through the pine trees in just the right way, he can still hear Bella's healing hum echoing through the forest. And on those days, every injured animal for miles around seems to recover a little faster. Every broken heart mends a little easier, and every person who has lost hope finds just enough strength to keep going. Frank Miller lived for 3 more years after that miraculous night, long enough to see Tommy start school, to teach him everything he knew about the forest, and to pass down the story of a bear who loved a human family so much that she gave everything she had to keep them together. The journal that Dr. Hartwell had started, and Frank had continued now, sits in Maya's veterinary clinic, serving as a reminder that love comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most powerful healing happens not in hospitals or laboratories, but in the quiet moments when one heart reaches out to help another. And in the forest near Pine Ridge Road, there's a small memorial stone that Frank placed near his cabin before he passed away. The inscription reads simply, "For Bella, who taught us that miracles are just love wearing a different coat." Maya visits that stone every year on the anniversary of the day she first met Bella and Tommy on that winding country road. She brings flowers and honey, Frank's favorite offerings for the bears, and she tells Bella's story to anyone who will listen. Because some stories are too important to forget, and some love is too powerful to ever truly die.